welcome to this week's episode of Automated, where I have not yet been told to silence my voice by the rudeness of our audio engineer. Automated is our weekly podcast where at Polymath Robotics, we do two different parts. First, we make up a robot drawing random cards that may or may not have been emailed to us by a major fan of ours.
I thought we were using OpenAI this week too.
No, we did that. We did that like the AI episode, but we still got a lot of good ones on this list here.
All right,
and then we talk about some topic in robotics. And Ilia, do you remember what topic we agreed to talk about?
I do not.
It'll be a surprise. I, of course, am Stefan Socksmarker, CEO and co-founder here at Polymath, and sitting across from me is a member of House Harkonnen, who is duplicitously wearing a House Atreides t-shirt because that's just how cool we are here at Polymath.
It's extra fun because my dad's name is Vladimir. So makes perfect sense.
Speaking of which, this week we have a very special sponsor, Olga. Olga has been sponsoring Ilia, sitting across from me, someone could say his entire life plus 9 to 10 months beforehand. Most recently, she spread disinformation about the linguistic origins of certain Japanese words that were then quickly debunked by other people in the broader Polymath community.
All I'm going to say about this is, hi, Mom.
And with that being said, let's get into our podcast. This week in Automated, we're going to talk about regulating robots.
Oh, yeah.
And how great and easy and perfect it always goes.
Just regulation, maybe even slightly more broadly.
All right, Joe Rogan.
Things.
But I think robots and AI regulation is the real interesting thing we want to talk about. With that being said, let's play a little game.
All right.
So this is our game that we play in every episode. First, normally we draw a business card and a technology card to kind of invent a robot based on the technical skills of the CTO and the business interests of the CEO. Now, this week, we are continuing a tradition from 2 weeks ago when Adam A. sent us in a list of different technologies for us to try, because I think his quote in the email was, "Oh my gosh, all the technologies you use are super dated. You're the worst." And then he went on to use a lot of profanity at our expense. But anyway, so he has a list of technologies here, and he has a list of application areas here. Ilia, why don't we start with an application area? Why don't you choose a number between 1 and 10?
Can I just insert a sidebar comment here? Polymath just had our kind of quarterly-ish offsite. And
we average once every 2 quarters for this quarterly-ish offsite. Sort of like our weekly podcast that happens once every 3 weeks.
That's right. And just to give you a flavor of Stefan's mental process, one of the comments was, "Yay, Stefan is the best." As part of our
I don't know who
feedback.
typed that, but it really meant a lot to me that the team all rallied around that.
So when you send your feedback, if it is not couched in "Yay, Stefan is the best" flavor, he will read it directly as insult.
Actually, at some point in the offsite, the team started saying nice things about the company, and I tried to redirect us back to insults because that's more of my love language.
Jam.
Yeah.
More your jam.
Anyway, Elliot, pick an application area between 1 and 10.
1.
Ghost kitchens.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Yep. Technologies between 1 and 4.
Let's go with 1 again.
Robot swarm ghost kitchens.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So what's a ghost kitchen, Stefan?
So ghost kitchens are actually a really cool concept. As many of you know DoorDash, which, started off by being crowdsourced delivery people for kind of any restaurant you might ever know. Now, once DoorDash kind of starts taking off in a city, why do you actually need a restaurant? Why do you need some tables? Why do you need a dedicated kitchen, high cost real estate? There are, of course, restaurants that still exist, but there are things that might exist on DoorDash that don't have a restaurant attached. What they're based out of is something called a ghost kitchen, which you can think of as like a co-working space for restaurants, where there's just a whole bunch of stoves, there's a whole bunch of grills, there's a whole bunch of deep freezes and kind of everything that there might be. And there's just crews of people making Chinese food next to empanadas, next to pizzas, next to sushi, next to whatever. So it's basically a CapEx heavy center of making food quickly.
For delivery.
Delivery.
This is a relatively recent phenomenon.
Actually, if you want to be a conspiracy theorist, which I do, about Travis Kalanick, about a year, let's say March of 2019, he sold all of his remaining shares in Uber, where he had been ousted and defamed and felt like no one was really nice to him, blah, 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 blah. And he invested all of his money into the original Ghost Kitchens company, a company called Cloud Kitchens, which then just went gangbusters with COVID. I think Travis Kalanick spread COVID. You heard it here first, and let's just hope his lawyers don't listen to this podcast. But let's make up some swarm robots for a ghost kitchen.
All right, is that why people were sanitizing their deliveries? Cool. So before we get into this, let's talk about just one related topic. Mm-hmm. Zoom Pizza.
Yeah.
So
Zoom Pizza was kind of like a ghost kitchen in a truck. So like, rather than put all the expensive high capital cooking equipment in a central place and have, runners bring that food to individual people, let's put all that expensive capital into a bouncy metal box that can get hit by other cars.
Plus robots.
Yeah. And then add robots to make pizza in that box. And then do demos in places where your vehicle can't drive into.
Yeah.
I think at one point they were $1 billion company, which makes us all wonder, what the heck are we doing with our robots? We should all be more like Zoom Pizza, I think.
As robotics founders, every one of these stories depresses us just a little bit.
Like, there is no stupidity that we could come up with for this ghost kitchen thing, which I have to remind myself it's supposed to be stupid. That will be more stupid than Zoom Pizza.
Yeah. Because you listener, when you've ordered a pizza for delivery, have you thought to yourself, what I want, grocery store freezer aisle quality pizza delivered by robot weirdly earlier than I expected.
Yeah. I mean, instead of a 20-minute delivery time, you might get it delivered in
15.
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Changer.
5 minutes earlier.
But five minutes earlier for delivery, 5 minutes slower than DiGiorno.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I mean, thinking about that actually, here's an idea for our swarm robots.
Yeah.
So I worked at a pizza place in high school. We like a cool thing about that pizza chain, Vicelli's, in the Mid-Atlantic, is their pepperoni pizza was covered in pepperonis, which was kind of a pain, but kind of cool to eat. What if, rather than using robot arms or cantilevered stuff in this cloud kitchen, which verges on real robots or AMRs,
sure,
stupid,
sure,
ways to make money, that's dumb. What if we had tens of thousands of small quadcopters that moved ingredient by ingredient around the facility? Like one pepperoni per quadcopter.
Can I riff on this idea? Mm-hmm. I like the quadros. I like the ingredients. Your name of Cloud Kitchens really makes me think of a dirigible in the sky.
Yep. Which
is your storehouse of ingredients. And when you order,
we did recently see a startup that was building a fixed wing drone.
That's what I'm thinking.
That would yeet out a bunch of quadcopters that then had to go like find the little landing pad after they delivered a burrito.
All right, so here's the goal. Here's the goal. Amazon, we're waiting for your check.
Yeah.
Right, because they're the Uber like drone delivery. Okay, so there's a giant dirigible that just floats above the city. Mm-hmm. Inside of it is a bunch of freezers and a bunch of just automated logistics. Right, no humans in there. Yeah, very few.
Yeah, right? It's dark. It's a dark kitchen.
It's literally a cloud kitchen. It's a kitchen sitting near a cloud. Mm-hmm. When you order your Chinese food, it pulls out the like mostly pre-prepped menu, does the finishing steps to heat it up and whatever, and then drops it in a quad order, and it drops out of the thing and delivers it to your door.
See, what I was actually thinking, but we're getting away from swarm robots here. We're getting into just airships, which is a topic I could spend all day.
It's a swarm of. Okay. Fine.
Wait. What we could do is a series of zeppelins.
Yeah.
That there's like a spigot.
Yeah.
And it throws all the food into the spigot at the same time, all the ingredients that then drip out onto your house.
That's right.
So the targeting has to be really, really, really good. And there's like heating elements that burst into fire as it's like little napalm to cook it in flight to your backyard.
In classic tech bro fashion, we have taken a literary cautionary tale, in this case, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and have said
literary tale.
Yeah, and we've said, you know what? That sounds like a great idea. Let's do that.
But I think let's go back a little bit closer to reality.
All right.
Swarm robots inside a 50,000 square foot or 15,000 square foot cloud kitchen facility in like the financial district.
So why swarm? What are we getting with the swarm robots?
It's cool.
Yeah.
First of all.
Sure. You'll have to write like really good collision avoidance.
So robots are high capital. So if you have more of them, they could be cheaper. And therefore, It matters less when they break because of reasons.
I feel like we could take a page out of Ukraine's book right now. Like they have perfected the art of mass scale cheap quad rotors.
Yeah.
Just like hope that you're delivering food and not, not food.
Yeah. I mean, that's like back for food delivery where like, oh, if your autonomy sucks for your food delivery quadcopter, you just send like 15 and get like really poor quality food ingredients. One of these burritos is going to get there.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about it.
Exactly.
But I think robots quickly moving materials around this cloud kitchen, not AMRs.
Okay. So I do think
high speed.
I do think you're actually getting to a point here. Okay. Imagine your cloud kitchen, right? Mm-hmm. Right now, I haven't operated cloud kitchen. I have no idea. But like, I would imagine it's the support equipment, it's the fridges, it's the stoves, it's whatever. But everybody has their own ingredients. I'm betting, right? Because like the restaurant that's doing Chinese food probably has very few ingredients in common.
Shouldn't. They should almost have like an ingredient library.
Bingo, and that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But the problem with the ingredient library would be how do you actually get the right stuff to the right person at the right time?
And like those little trays, like those like little bucket things that like people have that have all their cut cucumbers.
Yeah.
Those seem dodgy. Those have always seemed dodgy to me. I know cucumber doesn't immediately go bad, but I want just-in-time cucumber delivery.
Just-in-time cucumber.
Yeah.
And what you could do is homogenize this a little bit. Where
everyone gets the same cucumbers. Everyone has the same leeks. Everyone has the same...
To some extent.
Pork.
To some extent, right? And because when you're actually cooking, a big chunk of meal prep is just like dice your onions and dice your cucumbers, whatever.
So you have your central robot magic arms that are dicing ingredients.
And then the quad rotors.
As for odor, quad rotors are bringing those little buckets of ingredients on a just in time.
Yeah.
To each like prep station.
Prep station. That's right.
And they're only ever delivering, 10 minutes worth of materials.
If that. So that could even be unique per order.
Yeah.
So, that one person who.
So that actually, like when the order comes in, it might be the 10th order that the chef in that station needs. But at that point, the cucumber starts getting sliced to the right amount.
That's right. Just perfectly in time. And, then you can really start to accommodate the person who has really, really particular food preferences. Yep. Like I like toasted sesame, but not toasted sesame. Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. So how do we think about building these like quad rotors? Like, I guess like for each of these food buckets, they probably got to move half a pound, quarter of a pound.
Most half a pound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They got to fly at high speed indoors autonomously.
But short distances, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, maybe like 2,000 feet at a time.
If that. Yeah.
And then could kind of, actually, I think you could do, they could fly to each station.
Yeah.
But then not fly back. They could fly to a central spot. And then that is basically like a conveyor belt.
Yeah.
And lands on this conveyor belt and get recharged on the conveyor belt while it returns.
Conveyors and stuff is like, you're getting really CapEx heavy. The benefit of these quad rotors is like your prep station could literally be a table with nothing special on it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of
well, no, like, but like every like 300 square feet.
Yeah.
There's like a chimney type of thing that the quad rotor goes down, lands to get on the conveyor belt and trickle charges on its way back.
But you need it back, right? My point is like your facility, even if it's a massive like Boeing sized facility, your quad rotor will fly across it in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So just let it deliver it, fly back and sit on a charging pad until it's needed again. Right? Because like the delta is so minor.
Yeah.
Like if it's a 1 minute flight or a 2 minute flight, like charge here, charge there, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right. But I think what you have is...
But imagine how much cheaper you can make the quad rotors if they only had enough battery...
For like 5 minutes?
No, for like 2 minutes, with fully loaded.
Yeah.
And then like just charge the entire way back.
I think because I think honestly what you'd want is you want like a giant platform of charging stations and just a forest of these quad rotors that just sit there and wait for the centralized system. Yeah. So that's the other thing is the quad rotors themselves I think would be very dumb.
Yeah.
They'd just basically be a battery, a radio, 4 motors and an IMU, and that's about it. And they just fly at a prescribed height so as to avoid obstacles. There's like a lot of traffic control. Exactly.
So that like, these 100 are going from here to there, but they're not hitting each other. Much like how mines actually do their autonomy, where it's a central station that's saying like, you drive on this path, you drive on that path, you guys aren't going to hit each other.
And I think this is the only, like currently, swarm robotics, the whole idea is that you have this dynamic mesh network and they talk with each other and all this fancy stuff, but that's all still pretty heavily in R&D land. If you
of
had
like actually
essentially
doing,
managed,
yeah. I mean, I was in some conversation recently where someone really wanted me to make a promise about swarming. I think it was like a military thing.
Yeah.
And it was like, I mean, we can drive 8,000 robots at the same time.
Yeah.
Like now, like one
They're
of them
just gonna
seeing
ignore each
something and the
other.
other 40 doing something about it. Like, sure, like we could publish a map kind of, but like the neat stuff that you want looks a lot like R&D.
Yeah. So the thing that comes to my mind is imagine a crowd of humans walking through a busy train station or bus station, whatever. Right now, because humans have our own brains and eyes, we can, without anybody telling us what to do, just navigate around each other and not smack into each other.
Yeah.
And like,
I mean, I try to smack into people though.
I mean, that tracks. But you don't really need the centralized system. But robots aren't that smart. And having a centralized system really cheats needing the intelligence. Yeah. Probably the reason the military is interested in a swarm system is it reduces the need for having a centralized planner, because a centralized planner is a weak link. If you lose contact with that centralized planner, your swarm is dead. If that centralized planner gets confused, your swarm is dead.
I also wonder if the broader bet on swarm robots is a bet that compute cost won't come down, and that you can't just, that it's more likely that you can't just have what's currently a supercomputer in a quadcopter 10 years from now, as opposed to, oh, we need a supercomputer. We need a tenth of a supercomputer on every quadcopter.
It's not even the compute that's the problem. Like actually doing motion planning isn't that energy intensive.
No, but I mean,
it's
like,
more about the comms.
If you're a robotics researcher in the 1980s, and like computers
good luck.
are right? Then like swarms make a lot of sense of like, let's take this room-sized computer, divide it into, you know, make every single robot have the equivalent of a 15th of it, and have 30 robots, so that if any of them die, it's fine. And then like swarm robots are kind of in a way a fundamental bet against compute becoming smaller and more efficient, less energy expensive, less powerful.
I can see
it's an anti-Moore's law bet.
Yeah,
which to be clear, sometimes pay off.
Yeah, I haven't thought about this. I can see what you're chipping at. I don't think that was, at least not consciously, the intent. I think more so it's the problem as soon as you get into real R&D for swarm robots is like, okay, so you have this theory that you've distributed your computing across a bunch of nodes. How do you actually handle when one of them fails? Like, what do you actually do? Because distributed computing today for, you know, data centers or whatever, like when a node fails, there's a whole bunch of like redundancy and recovery and like all this stuff that kicks into action, which is hugely inefficient.
Yeah.
And so, like,
which then, if the whole point is to make things more efficient and smaller, doesn't quite work.
Right, and more resilient. Yeah, right. Like in a military application, if at any time you could lose,
which is my point, that like
units,
thinking that is easier than just making better computers smaller.
Yeah,
is a bet against.
It's a bet against computers. That's fair.
Yeah,
in some sense. But I think back to our point. So I would put little fiducial trackers, so like a Vicon system, any one of these that basically have really high accuracy cameras. You have little retroreflectors on the machines. The cameras externally track the machines flying around the space, and you have a centralized planner that does traffic management and then individually assigns vectors to each one.
And you know what's neat about this traffic management? It finally will look as stupid as The Fifth Element, where you'll have flying cars stuck in traffic behind each other,
stuck in
because they'll all be regulated by like height. And there will therefore be traffic jams in the air when the robots theoretically could fly around each other.
I think if you actually do the math on this, on any sane space indoors where like you actually have high ceiling, you could stuff so many quadrotors on there before you hit that problem. Like adding a third dimension increases your space like tenfold.
Yeah.
You'd have to stuff the room so full of quadrotors you could not hear yourself speak. It would be so loud.
Imagine how awful it would be to be some like gig kitchen worker in this facility. And like every couple of hours, your quadrotor just like fails, drops soup all over you.
Just falls out of the sky with ingredients. Just raw meat just flying from the ceiling.
Like the rat problem in this facility would just be atrocious.
Awful.
Yeah, like you'd have rats like taking out the sweeper robots. It'd be great.
Exactly. You run the system for long enough, the rats would evolve like predatory instinct to swat down quadrotors out of the sky.
I also like that we don't think. The quadrotor thing, sure. Sweeping robots, sure. Humanoids doing food prep, probably not.
Probably not. Yeah.
Well, maybe.
It's a dexterity problem.
Yeah.
I could think, wrapping up the topic, like we would build kind of an Amazon Kiva type system where you have this large, constantly moving inventory system for raw ingredients, because it's a cloud kitchen, so like a company could come in and work for a few weeks and then disappear. You don't want to like maintain this random guy's meatballs forever, right? So you need this constantly managed inventory system that then essentially planned and distributes into little pods that the quad order goes from charging, picks up, delivers to table, goes back to charging, and it's all centrally planned. And that all makes sense, but I think again, like that workplace would be hellish. It would be loud, hot. Like, oh.
So the Cloud Kitchen Robot System 3000?
I would like, I don't know. I would call it Swarm of Bees. That's what, like angry bees is what this would sound like.
Angry Bees Swarm.
Yeah, exactly.
3000.
3000.
Yeah. So, hey, Travis Kalanick, if you're listening and haven't already sent your beefy lawyers to beat us up, we'd love to partner with you on this. Oh, that looks like that's the lawyers, and we should end the segment. Like my sound effect?
Excellent. It will come across as nothing like that on the
audio. All right. So this week we're going to talk about a little bit about regulation in robotics and autonomy. And to kind of kick it off, last week I was at this really neat AI public policy event that YC put on that was actually on the record, so I don't have to dance around what was said by who. But essentially the crux of the event was that Scott Wiener, who's the California state senator representing San Francisco, has a rather controversial AI bill kind of currently making the rounds through the state house. It's exceptionally popular statewide. It is looking like it's getting bipartisan support in both the assembly and the state senate.
You're looking at me like I should know this, and I'm the immigrant.
Yeah. And it's likely to be the law of the land. And there's a lot of different laws that a lot of different jurisdictions have passed about AI. Europe's is like fairly draconian or strict or stupid or whatever you want to phrase it. But what's been concerning about the Scott Wiener legislation is Scott Wiener's smart enough to have written good legislation, and like it's legislation with teeth, and how the teeth come out can be possibly kind of scary. And I say this as someone who I like Scott Wiener. He's actually been remarkably good on housing. He passed a law, he drafted and passed a law in California that basically made it so that cities in California that aren't building enough housing can be forced to build more housing. And that's probably why a lot of housing is going to get built in San Francisco this year. When it comes to San Francisco local politics, I think of housing is the root of all of our problems, and we just need to build more of it. So I've been a big Scott Wiener fan. And then he wrote a bill that basically says that if you've spent more than $100 million, any model that has had more than $100 million spent to train it, the people who use it are responsible for making sure that it is safe, with some definitions around safety that I can't quote verbatim. And if they aren't, then the Attorney General of California can sue you for it. If you are taking an open model like Lambda 2, Lambda 3, whatever the one that Meta just released, and you substantially change it, even if you don't spend $100 million training it, you still have to fall into the same thing. So if you took Lambda 2, Lambda 3, and did, a 10% worth of changes to the weights and biases or whatever, you suddenly are regulated in a big way about whether your model is safe or not. And I'd say actually to narrow the conversation a little bit, if we had all powerful and true AGI, I think it makes sense to have guardrails. My concern is most of this AI sucks. And we're going to have really complicated rules in place where if you want to do a chat GPT for reviewing legal documents, you suddenly need to think about compliance with how your retrained model of ChatGPT works. If you're using AI to analyze, crop yields, and you fall under that definition of harm, then theoretically you can be held liable. And I think this reminds me a lot of rules in self-driving cars and in self-driving tractors, where some people interpret Cal OSHA to say that self-driving tractors are illegal as a just starting point in California. California's on-road autonomous vehicle laws explicitly exclude trucks from doing anything above level 2. require a whole bunch of stuff for cars. And also the autonomous driving panic, you could call it 2016, means that delivery robots are explicitly illegal in San Francisco. And delivery robots have not taken the world by storm. There's just complicated rules in San Francisco to protect us from, unethical delivery robot companies when there aren't really delivery robot companies that are particularly successful. So I think almost like my thought on this problem is similar to how VCs sometimes don't understand how this market's going to turn out. Sometimes regulators start trying to regulate the pipe dream vision of the future that never comes to pass. And I don't know how we do anything about that.
Yeah. They're kind of regulating to the popular perception of what's happening rather than the reality of what's happening.
Like I remember a friend texting me when Andrew Yang was running for the primary and like, oh, well, like, what are you going to do about how, Andrew Yang wants to make self-driving trucks illegal. What are you going to do? And I was like, as someone who's working in the space, like, most truck drivers have nothing to fear. We're talking 5 to 10 years off until there's any major displacement. And then it's only going to be in certain places. Well, that's not how most people I know think about it. Like,
yeah,
because you're reading TechCrunch or New York Times, which are saying this is all going to magically happen next week.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's when we were chatting about this earlier, I kind of brought up the case of I'm even less interested in, because legislation and law comes down to language in some sense, right? And you have to, words have meaning, you have to define what you're trying to legislate. But the problem is often you'll get bogged down as like, I'm going to legislate that if you use this algorithm, you must do A, B, C, D. And
I think often it's dumber than that. It's if you use an algorithm.
Yeah, exactly. An algorithm. Right.
Like there's actually a lot of people who are passionate about criminal justice reform are really passionate about like, we don't want to use algorithms in policing.
Right. And then it's like, okay, well then we produce software for police, but we're not using algorithms. We're using data models.
Algorithms. There's no way you write software and it doesn't use algorithms somewhere in there.
Right. And so,
and like, I get it. Like the idea of evil AI that's like, oh, we ran this secret background check of you and we found blah, blah, blah. And we've just detected that you're a 22% chance of murdering someone next week. That's terrifying.
See the Minority Report.
Yeah. I used some math that said that based on this type of offense that you did and this other offense that you did in your prior, you're 25% more likely, and therefore you should get a slightly harsher sentence. This makes a little bit more sense.
I think we're kind of coming at this the wrong way, to my mind. Mm-hmm. I think we're trying to legislate outcomes like harm, where I think what might be more interesting is to try to legislate inputs into the system. So the thing that I was thinking of is, why not make it so that if in your example, this $100 million model, right? Why not require that the weights and biases used in those particular models are auditable? Yeah. By experts, by the public, by
someone smart enough to say this is janky.
Right. So that because I've of the case studies I've read of abuses of algorithmic outputs, they tend to be due to just, frankly, poor data science, small sample sizes, biased data sets, intentionally skewing results for more sensational results. Like they're all just bad efforts, either on purpose or accidentally.
And I think part of one of the problems here is that a lot of people view those algorithms as their proprietary IP.
Yeah.
Which then means that if they are important in, say, determining who we should lock behind the slammer forever, they're very, very important and secretive. And I think we're generally uncomfortable with important, secretive things.
Exactly. Like when a judge makes a ruling.
See Area 51.
Yeah. Well, I think it's even more than that. Like when a judge makes a ruling on anything from the most basic minor criminal case to something significant, they're going to write multiple pages of documentation of why they made the decision, what the precedent is. And legal work is just,
it's highly observable.
Piles of paperwork.
Yeah.
Right.
It's highly observable even if you can't read scholarly legal writing.
Yeah.
Like you can read, you can deduce it and figure it out. Whereas if it's a model with 10,000 parameters, good luck. Exactly. And even if I can't read legalese, I have trust that there are people in the system. Yeah. There is someone who will be pissy enough about this outcome who is capable of reading the legalese.
Yeah.
Who will simplify it for me in a listicle a la BuzzFeed. 14 reasons why this decision was BS.
Right. Or the example.
Ideally with a who's hot or not ad in the end of it.
No, cat photos. Come on.
These cat photos will blow you away.
Yeah. Click on number 4. Anyway, it's the same. It's like the airplane pilot argument, right? Like, I can't fly a plane. I can trust that somebody knows how to fly a plane and that there's a government body reviewing that planes are reasonably safe.
Yeah.
Right. But we don't really, software in general and, big data in quotation marks, or algorithmics in particular, is such a new field that we haven't really established those norms of like, when you make an airplane, you have to make your documentation open to the FAA so that we know it's not going to fall out of the sky.
One of my favorite things about this session that YC put on is, so Scott Wiener did his spiel and was very thoughtful, cogent, saying I'd love to work with you all. Tell me what your feedback is, blah, blah, blah. And I've taken a lot of feedback from the community and changed a lot of things, blah, blah, blah. And then Andrew Ng, the guy who taught us all machine learning, goes up and
one of the guys.
Yeah, one of the guys who taught us all machine learning goes up there for a rebuttal because he happened to be in the audience and was asked to go do a rebuttal. And Andrew was like, I've read this bill. I don't understand what I'm supposed to do here. This is pretty complicated. With a subtext being, and I'm freaking Andrew Ng. I'm smart. This makes no sense to me. I think part of the thing with this is when it comes to AI, when it comes to plane design, the people who are designing planes understand how planes are designed. The regulators who are regulating how planes are designed understand how planes are designed.
I push back on that a little
I think good AI people struggle to understand how their own models actually work, how they're actually coming to this, which makes it harder for anyone to write really good policy to restrict what these things do.
I agree with that. I think the one thing I'll push back on is that aircraft industry regulators might not necessarily understand how to build a plane, but they have so much historic precedent to fall back on for good reason, right? Like most safety regulations, the saying goes, are written in blood.
Yeah.
Because it's some aircraft
because
disaster
they ran out
in
of ink?
Yeah, that's right. Hey, ink is more expensive than blood by volume. Just ask HP. Anyway, some aircraft disaster in 1965 has made it so that you have to have this specific safety switch on your doors.
Yeah.
And period. There's no argument about this.
Yep.
You don't have this switch, you don't fly.
Yep.
And we don't have that kind of level of scrutiny or history in our field.
And I think part of the problem is right now there's sensational fear about AGI wiping all the jobs away and spreading misinformation, doing this, that, or the other. And the sensations versus the reality are unevenly going to be fragmented in the next 5 years, but people feel like they want something to happen now.
Yeah.
It's my belief that that Scott Wiener is writing this legislation so he can run for statewide office. I think Vox did an article about this piece of legislation that get 75 or 85% approval rate statewide. Yeah. It's a banger.
Right.
For everyone except his constituents in San Francisco.
For everyone except people working on AI.
Yeah.
Sounds fishy, but
But even the people who work in AI who are concerned about runaway AI are this doesn't make a lot of sense. It seems a little too much too early.
Yeah, it's too much. And again, I don't think it's targeting the right thing.
Yeah.
I think having the ability, so introspection, and you hit something I think very right, is that there's actually a really strong emerging field right now in studying how AI actually works.
Mm-hmm.
We've kind of accidentally built something that we don't fully understand, which is cool, but scary.
Yeah.
Scary in the not apocalyptic sense, but in the
our capabilities are getting away from us a little bit.
Yeah, this is odd.
Yeah.
And I think
it's different than building a gear.
Right. And I think there is no current federal AI administration.
Yeah.
Or something like that would fund the studies and put in the effort and start putting in these standards that to even start grasping the problem of what is actually the problems in this.
But I mean
that I think is much more important than legislating a quick fix.
But going back to how it's too early, we were joking about this earlier, but the SAE levels of autonomy.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are unfamiliar, there's an SAE standard on levels of autonomy where level 0 is, a Henry Ford Model T. Level 5 is a magic self-driving car that can drive anywhere, ever, in any conditions. And then it gets kind of murky in between. The standard explicitly does not include teleop. So like, is teleop a level 0 vehicle? Is it a level 5 vehicle? Is it a level 4? If there's good connectivity, blah, 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 blah. Kind of everyone's come to the conclusion that level 5 doesn't really exist, so on and so forth. This standard was viciously debated to make it into a standard, with people thinking like that being on the committee at SAE to draft this standard was like their crowning achievement. It has been passed into law in like a number of states and jurisdictions. I don't know whether that number is like 10 or like 30, but it's not like 2. This is a highly legislated and real standard that the autonomy industry has kind of started looking at as like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, is a teleopt vehicle level 0? Is it level 4? Is Waymo level 4? Is it level 5? If they have a remote person who sometimes gives advice, is it level 3? If their remote person's watching all the time and is technically responsible, is it actually only level 2? The states that, like California says you can't do anything on vehicles that on trucks in the state of California that's beyond level 3. So if you're testing a level 4 system, but you have a person behind the wheel the whole time and they're involved, is that level 2 or are you breaking the law? All because like this rule was made too early. And not too early, like 3 decades too early, like 2 years too early.
Yeah.
And like, had they waited 2 years later to make the standard, they would have been like, this is dumb. Yeah, not worth it. Not worth all the extra effort.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying we need to fund efforts to actually do the studies necessary to actually get this going.
Yeah.
And to be clear, I think those efforts are going to take a decade at least.
Yeah. I mean, another idea that I like a lot for things like this is automatically have the law sunset.
Yeah, that's another thought. Totally.
Of basically like people are freaked out about it right now.
Yeah.
Cool. You got to do a law to protect us from the AGI that's going to show up tomorrow. Great. Have the law die in 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, because what happened in California, like Google lobbied California for autonomous vehicle law early, like 2010, 2011. By 2014, they passed a very thoughtful law that was kind of good, thoughtful policy for how everyone thought self-driving cars were going to work as of 2013, was written into law sometime between 2012 and 2014-ish. People like the California DOT probably spent 10 to 30,000 man hours writing this policy. And then like the robo-taxis didn't come. The policy explicitly didn't include trucks. So in like 2019, 2018-ish, California Highway Patrol, who regulates trucks, were like, seems like our brothers in CA DOT did a lot of work and got nothing. Let's see if it's worth anything. Nope, the industry's fake. All right, well, we'll wait for another 5 to 10 years. And I think like that's probably a better approach of like do the minimal thing that the public wants and have it sunset so that like when reality starts to rear its ugly, disappointing, child disillusionment head, the rules can show up that are much more sane.
Yeah. I think that's true. I agree with all of that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I also
makes for an interesting podcast. I speak, you agree.
Yeah, I agree to everything.
Is this how all of our internal like technical discussions and leadership things and priority meetings are?
That's why we're doing so well. That's why I came to work today in a Ferrari.
Yep.
But no, I think just like many governments will fund fundamental research in life sciences, I think this is another place where there's no company willing to spend money on, but very few companies right now are willing to spend money on like, how does AI work fundamentally?
Yeah.
And, YC isn't full of startups about like comprehensibility and explainability of AI stuff.
I mean, there are a lot of companies though who are specifically trying to do understandable AI.
Is ish, right? You got to admit, like in the weight of things, like there's many more ChatGPT for X apps than there is like,
of course,
fundamental research.
There's always going to be more applications on these platforms.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good place for government to step in of there's no short-term financial incentive for a company to do this kind of research, but it is important research, not only in the legislative frame, but in the like fundamentally, do we understand the thing we're trying to build and trying to legislate?
Yeah.
And that's lacking currently.
Yeah.
In a lot of sense.
And I'm sure,
some terms.
I'm sure there are teams researching this. We just haven't been following it.
No, there are. Like, OpenAI had an AI safety team, sort of killed it, sort of trying to resurrect it now. Google had an AI safety team, sort of killed it, sort of trying to resurrect it now. Like, this has been a repeated story over and over and over. And I think it just lines up with the fundamentals of AI safety and, again, using safety in a loose sense. And explainability is just not aligned with any particular financial incentive. So it's hard to keep it prioritized in a for-profit driven space.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how we would fund that effort. Right.
Yeah, me neither.
Right. So I think this is.
Well, I mean, I think there's probably a product reason to understand how your stuff works, to understand what you should double down on. Like, are hallucinations driven by X? Are the ability for Stefan to get around language to stop from making images of babies fighting each other? Like, does it work like this, or does it work like that? Obviously, just blocking certain keywords like Yakuza is not enough when I can follow up with a new prompt saying underground bar where they're preparing to sumo wrestle, betting more than just money.
Yeah, and I think
made for great party invites for my son's first birthday.
The kind of organizations who can fund that effort are going to be like OpenAI's and Google's and whatever. The people who are OpenAI was losing what, $5 billion,
something like that, a
lot of money, right? And so, do we want to live in a world where the only players in this emerging field are the ones with a lot of money who don't?
The rest of that event had a bunch of people from the SEC specifically talking about, we need to make sure there's competition in AI, given how important AI is.
Yeah. So again, I think there's space here for government work to actually level the playing field a little bit.
But more broadly, going to broader robots, I mean, I think right now, we now work in off-highway vehicles where there are regulations, but they're
fairly loose.
Yeah, they're fairly loose in general.
Yeah.
But like, conceivably, there could be a town, there could be a state with a strong union doing blah, 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 that gets annoyed at all the jobs being regulated away, or the fear of all the jobs getting regulated away, and then wants to basically regulate autonomy out of the world before it's even in it. And I guess, like, how do we think about, or how should we, or listeners or whoever, think about how we balance the pitch and the dream versus the reality?
Yeah. I think it's very useful here to have a kind of a disinterested third party to look frankly at, and economists in a lot of academic settings are doing this right now, to look frankly at like what actually impact is this particular technology having microeconomically, macroeconomically. Like, I'm very much data-driven person, and I'd love to see that sort of thing more common. I know it doesn't resonate emotionally as nicely, but just looking at a trend line of here's how employment has fallen in this industry. Like, take coal, for example.
Yeah.
Right? Like, coal employment has fallen every single year since, I don't know, the 70s or the 80s.
Yeah.
Right? Like, some number like that.
Probably
the industry has dropped
every
year, almost without.
Yep.
And that's for a number of factors. Our production methods have gotten more efficient. Natural gas plants make up more of our energy mix now. So on and so on and so on. I'm certain an economist in the 70s or 80s or whatever could have called that out very clearly.
Yeah.
With a very small error margin.
Yeah.
And set policy for these groups to say, like, hey, Appalachians, this is what 2020 is going to look like for you. Plus or minus 5%.
I don't think people are very into reading economic reports.
Well, I understand, but hopefully the leaders of that area should be.
Though, I think you have an interesting broader point, which is that the spiciness of these industries, the spiciness of things like AI and robots and autonomy is good for raising venture dollars, but bad for long-term viability.
Yeah.
So if you're automating a hyper-specific vehicle in a hyper-specific use case, and it's probably better for you to make it sound minimally interesting.
Yeah.
For you to say, like, yes, we are.
This isn't autonomy. This is just
vehicle automation.
Yeah. This is automated sub-functions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or not even just algorithms.
And while that's like probably going to kill your chances of raising a Series C from Sequoia at a billion X multiple, it probably would mean you could take the whole market before anyone knows how good it is.
Yeah.
And also without scaring the people whose jobs are never going to be at risk anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think, again, realistically, despite all the claims and whatever, I don't think 100% autonomy is within humanity's grasp right now anyway. Right? So just like building a larger mining vehicle so that you don't need to employ as many people, making that mining vehicle autonomous, which then has some remote support or teleoperation or whatever, is more of the same trend. It's just more efficiency with bigger, more efficient equipment, less people.
I mean, this is a new thought to me, and this is thinking on the fly, but like, I don't know, I'm really into this thought of basically the hype that is great for getting written about in the New York Times or getting a venture round is destructive to the public relations pitch.
Yeah.
And I mean,
pretty expressly.
While also not being aligned with reality anyway. Like, it's not like, you have magic autonomy. You're telling everyone it can just do some things. It's by pitching my humanoid robots will replace every manual laborer in the world in 15 years. Create a lot of headwinds to building your rather shitty, rather limited robot.
Yeah. I think to put concrete examples to this, to the two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
On one end, you have Tesla.
Yep.
Who has claimed full self-driving for the last decade.
And sold a lot of mediocre cars doing it.
And on the other end, you have Google, who's been quietly working on this problem for also better part of a decade.
And is much closer to a real product.
And actually has, I would claim,
I mean, they used to do a lot more PR on it, but I do, someone who used to work for me went to join Waymo's PR team afterwards.
Yeah.
I remember asking her, like, I haven't seen a lot of stories. And like, basically, she saw a big part of her job as killing stories.
Yeah, exactly. It's just quietly,
like getting them not written about.
Quietly working away on the problem. I have questions about their technical approach, but that's a different matter.
Yeah. I mean, we should map the world.
Yeah, just map every square inch of every place we drive. But so those are two extremes, right? Like Google/Alphabet. We keep using the term Google, but Waymo, Alphabet.
No one says Alphabet. Like, that's like, they could just drop that. I've never once heard anyone in full like genuineness be like, who I think is a great company? Alphabet.
They have the capital and the trust of the market to not need to chase VCs or short-term returns. Right? Tesla, their stock price currently is largely hype-based.
Yeah.
I think any sane person would argue.
Well, we did a fun for previously mentioned offsite. We did a fun exercise where I talked about different companies and their multiples. Yeah. And Tesla was like still far off in the crazy land of like 9x earning valuation of the company relative to just revenue.
Right. Whereas Google spins up projects to burn money to not look too profitable.
And they still get called a monopoly.
Yeah.
There's news as of today, aka 3 days ago, whenever this gets launched.
So that's, I mean, to your point, if you want to go do VC and burn bright,
if your product is doing good enough to not need to raise venture rounds every couple of years, you probably will have more longevity in the market.
Yeah, maybe take it quietly.
Yeah, and that's our master plan of why we've been so quiet and devoid of press. Not because we've been busy.
No. Not because we have no time to chase.
Well, Ilia,
it's all been 4D chess.
What are we going to talk about next time on our weekly podcast that probably won't be recorded for 4 months?
Yeah.
Did I mention weekly enough this episode?
No. You've been weak on it.
Shit.
I think next time we'll get a call it from your folks.
Well, we'll see.
I'm expecting it.
Well, that being said, thank you all so much for joining us this week. We'll talk to you soon.
See you next time.